Sync sound. You know any songs?
Snap-based songs?
Yeah. You know any mariachi songs? Brandon Lee is an American filmmaker who travels the world creating short films, tutorials, and social media content. His work has been recognized by the BBC, National Geographic, the Webby Awards, as well as Vimeo's Staff Picks and Best of the Year. He is fascinated by world cultures, creative filmmaking techniques, and the latest technology. Brandon is a pioneer when it comes to gimbal and stabilizer shots, inspiring a generation with his cinematography and one-take choreography. He also runs an online film school, Unscripted Studio, teaching the art of improvised storytelling. This is Creator Convo with Brandon Lee. Long time no see. It's been 5 days.
5 days since Sony Kondo.
I know. We haven't met ever. So we went from like 4 years of knowing each other on the internet to then meeting each other and then 4 days seeing each other again, which is great.
That's awesome.
I know. So I usually start with like backstory. Where did you grow up and how did you get into filmmaking? Like, yeah, was it something you're passionate from the beginning or?
Yeah, I've always been passionate about movies, watching movies and imagining plots and things like that. And also like travel journalism and like street photography and basically just being out in the world with a camera, regardless of what I'm shooting. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, actually.
Wow.
So my family's not entirely American. My dad's from Hong Kong. My mom's American. And because my dad just got a job in Missouri, that's where I grew up, kind of like a random, dart on the board. But yeah, all growing up, I wish that I could see the world and I would, look through National Geographic magazines and watch Indiana Jones movies and just fantasize. And I never thought I would actually get to travel because it just seemed like the world was so far away. And then I went to film school, and after that, I got some offers to travel around doing commercial work and other kinds of shooting. So basically, the camera just became my passport to see the world.
Where was like the first place you wanted to travel? And both of your parents are one of them American, neither of them American. Where are they from originally?
One parent is American. My mom is American, and she's from New Mexico, which gets really confusing because my dad is from Hong Kong. And I look like I could be from anywhere. So country. People ask me, like, here's the chain of questions whenever I go anywhere. It's like, where are you from? America. But you don't look American. Where are you really from? Well, I'm from America. But if you're asking where my parents are from, I'm half Cantonese and half American. Oh, okay. So where's your mom from? She's from America. Where in America? New Mexico. Mexico? So you're half Mexican? No, not Mexico. America. And then it just keeps going and going. And then they ask, where I grew up, and I say St. Louis, Missouri. And nobody outside this country knows where St. Louis, Missouri is.
Are they passionate about the arts as well? Like, did you watch films with them or?
50%. My mom is passionate about the arts. She was actually a romance novelist when I was growing up. She wrote like 20 of those like paperback, like the guy with the shirt ripped open and the woman like going like that. She wrote like 20 of those novels for Harlequin.
That's very cool.
My dad's a scientist, completely the other end of the spectrum.
Where do you think you lean in between the two of them?
Well, I'm an artist, but I'm also really technical and nerdy. So I guess I got kind of a mix of the two of them.
It's the best having kind of the right brain, left brain, the mix of the two, right?
Unless they fight each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm always in battle between the two sides of my brain, just like loving technology, wanting to learn more about technology, but then wanting to be like loose and creative and stuff. So yeah, they could be at odds with each other sometimes. I asked you this in Kondo, but I'll bring it up again. I feel like you're famous for stabilizer movements and these long kind of beautiful, almost like choreographed type of shots. I even asked you at Kondo, were you using a glide cam? Were you always on a steady cam? When did you know you loved those type of movements? Like, what inspires you? Like, where did that inspiration come from? For me, I love Spielberg, and he has those long kind of takes. Was it just watching films like that, or where did it come from?
I've always been obsessed with tracking shots in movies, and growing up, I thought that it always would take a team. And so yeah, when gimbals became small and portable, I started using them, and quickly they became my primary way of shooting. But yeah, way back to when I was a kid, like the earliest thing I can remember is seeing the behind the scenes of Return of the Jedi, and how they took a Steadicam and walked along like this course that they had laid out with fishing line in a forest. If anybody remembers, where's it, Endor, like the forest planet, and there's this speed bike chase in Return of the Jedi, the 1984 whatever Star Wars movie. The background of that scene, the scenery rushing past at 100 miles per hour in a forest, could not be shot at normal speed. So they shot it as a time lapse with a Steadicam following a fishing line guide through the forest, and they shot it with like a 1-second shutter.
Very cool.
And that's the first time I remember thinking, holy crap, that's amazing what they can do with just a guy walking with a camera.
Yeah. What was your first piece of gear that you got? Do you remember?
My first piece of gear was my dad's old film camera. And the first thing I tried in life was photography. It was an old Canon camera. And I remember looking through the viewfinder and seeing this beautiful world and saying, oh my God, this is incredible. It looks like a movie. And then I take all my pictures and I got them developed and they look like utter crap. I was like, this looks nothing like how I thought it was going to look through the viewfinder. And I quickly realized that I'm actually not great at still photography, like composition, just making things perfect in one frame. What I'm much better at is capturing things in motion in a way where they sort of fall into the composition and fall out of the composition in interesting ways. And I figured that out early on when I was a kid, and that's kind of been my guiding principle ever since then.
And when did you start getting into the teaching aspect of things? Because I remember watching your stuff, even with like Vimeo staff pics and all the beautiful choreography that was being laid out in the frame. And it's almost as if you were directing, or maybe that was the way you were seeing the world, if it was a dancer coming through a window or whatever it may be. When did you know just like how to do it, and then also when you wanted to teach people it also? Because I feel like just making cinematic films was such a trend in like 2016, 2018, but now it's great because people are learning from you. You have a course, right? And then also I watch when you're like, oh, here's 5 gimbal tricks or 5 motion things you can do, because it is super useful. So yeah, when did you decide, okay, teaching would be an awesome part of it? I'm sure people always were reaching out to you, and yeah.
So teaching was something that I started basically as a geeky obsession. I had a blog called Run Gun Shoot way back before I had a YouTube channel. And every time I would figure something out, I would just make a blog post about it because I thought it was cool and I didn't care who read it or anything. So like one of the first things I posted was about the RX 100 cameras. Remember the first generation of those, the little handheld Sony cameras with the 1-inch sensors?
Yeah.
I figured out how to shoot with 2 of them at the same time and power them with power banks that I put in like those sport bands that you put your iPhone in on my shoulders, and I connected them with retractable USB-C cables.
Wow.
So it looked like a cyborg, but I actually filmed a couple episodes of a reality show on MTV with these 2 cameras and some portable voice recorders.
Wow.
It was the show True Life that I worked on at the time.
Oh yeah, I remember True Life.
Yeah, so I made blog posts about geeky stuff like that, and then I started making more Vimeo videos, and there was just a lot of pressure for me to make a YouTube channel from my audience. Basically, they kept asking me for tutorials, like a lot of DMs, a lot of comments, and eventually I was like, okay, I can't answer everybody individually, so I'll just start making videos to answer everything all at once. And that's why my first few YouTube videos were like basically me just sitting there and trying to answer as many questions in a single video as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's super. It's cool that there was a demand for that, and you were willing to teach that also.
Well, we're talking about like, 2016, maybe 2017.
Yeah.
There was maybe 1 or 2 channels on YouTube that were teaching this kind of solo filmmaking, especially with any like auteurism, as opposed to just filmmaking 101. Here's what a film is, here's what here's what a shot is. There weren't really many people teaching this is my style.
Yeah.
And here's how to do a particular type of, filmmaking.
So when you are out in the field, whether you're traveling, how much pre-production do you think you do going into a shoot? I'm sure if it's something branded or something specific, you put some thought into it. But I guess take me through your process from maybe those times, 2016 to maybe now, where obviously you have more experience, so you know what to look for and stuff. What was your thought process in like 2016, 2017, just going out traveling, making these beautiful cinematic travel films versus where your head's at today if you're going to go shoot something?
Back then, I was making my travel films in my free time between commercial gigs. I was mostly working in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai. So I would have a window of time, and I basically looked at what were the flights I could afford from where I was starting, and what places seemed interesting to me. And then I would look at a calendar, and I would see what cultural festivals were happening within that time frame. So I would say, okay, I can go to India, and if I go to Rishikesh, they have a nightly fire ceremony that's every night along the Ganges River. So that's something I could definitely film. So I'll just sort of say, okay, as long as I get that ceremony really good on camera, then probably it won't be that hard to fill out the rest of the video with other stuff that gives like background and context to it. So I'd kind of just start with a climax scene, if you will.
Got it.
Something that was definitely going to be really amazing, really interesting, and had a process to it as opposed to just being a cool shot. So for instance, I could go to Bali and go hike up to the volcano at sunrise and see the sunrise, but then I'm just standing there and it's not really a scene. Whereas I could also go to Western Mongolia and film the process of the Kazakh eagle hunters taking their eagles out and hunting for foxes. And yeah, that's a lot more work, and it's much more difficult to shoot, but it also results in a lot more of a story than just me going for a hike and seeing something beautiful.
Yeah, I feel you. A lot of the times people are just hunting for that one shot or the most cinematic frame or setup, if you will, but then nothing to build around it. So for you, you're thinking of almost like not the hook, but this is going to be the climax, like you're saying, of the film or whatever it is I'm making, and you're thinking more of the storyline and how you can build from it. And how do you think of what's always interesting for me is how you cut motion and how you cut I guess for lack of a better term, like transitions. Are you thinking while you're filming? Do you try to plan it ahead? Do you know if someone's like twirling a certain way that you're going to be able to shoot something with the same type of motion and put those two together? Or what's your thought process when it comes to that?
Well, there's two kinds of shots that almost always lead to a good edit. One is symmetry and centered subjects. When you have a frame that's symmetrical, either left to right, top to bottom, or both, then you can match cut those shots really well together. And the other type of shot is congruent motion. So you have somebody moving left to right in one frame, or the camera's moving left to right, and then you have another shot where the camera's moving left to right, or the subject's moving left to right. And as long as you have a lot of congruent motion and a lot of symmetry in the menu of shots, then there will be a way to cut them together so it looks really intentional. So those were the basic two that I would start with and always keep in mind as I was shooting. And then beyond that, I did a lot of experimenting with shots that may connect to nothing. They might magically, meld together in some unexpected way, but there was a lot of randomness as well. But I always made sure to get a few shots that would definitely connect in a way that seemed like I had storyboarded and planned it.
Yeah, it feels that way, which is super cool. Obviously, social media is constantly changing, and I feel like we both come from the background of just making cinematic films for the sake of making cinematic films, whether it's centering around a particular place or a particular person and their story. I personally love that and the long form, horizontal form of making stuff. Now, there's obviously been a pivot to more short form, vertical type of content in order to feed the algorithm and whatever. Do you keep up with that type of stuff? Do you try to pivot and make more vertical short form stuff? Or are you still focusing primarily on these short films and horizontal stuff? How do you think about all of that?
The vertical stuff is tough for me because it's too short for the ideas that I want to get across, unless I'm just doing BTS. And most of my Instagram is just behind the scenes of other projects. But if I actually try to do something creative in vertical, in short form for Instagram Reels or whatever, I do still struggle with that. I feel like I haven't found my stride at all. even though actually a lot of the kinds of videos that people are posting as cinematic reels or as travel reels, aesthetic reels, I guess, a lot of them are based on travel and culture. And I think it's quite interesting, you know, what the form of art has become there. But yeah, it's been hard for me to find a rhythm that really feels like me, because I feel like my mind wants something longer and wider.
Yeah, I agree with you. I find, weirdly, I feel like we're in this paradigm shift too, where, you know, I even have friends that have made hats that are jokes that say like make videos horizontal again and stuff like that. But I feel like there is this yearning for longer content. That's why I like doing podcasts or just watching longer form content, whatever it is. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like just sticking to what feels right to you, I don't know, conforming to whatever the social norm is, I feel like will never really truly make you successful. Maybe your engagement will go up for a little bit, but what's the longevity there? That's what I always worry about, you know?
I don't know what the longevity is of anything in media. I mean, we're in the middle of like a collapse of Hollywood production right now. Documentaries are pulling back. You know, basically the industry as a whole is in some state of contraction unless you've already kind of made it. And that's a bit scary on one hand, but whenever something retracts like that, like the tide always goes back out again. It's just not the same as it was before. And if I could predict what that next thing was going to be, then of course I'd be doing it right now. But I mean, right now, yeah, it's a kind of a weird transitionary period, because it feels like social media has gone way past the first phase where it was all just really exciting and new and everybody's experimenting. And now everybody's just gaming the algorithm.
Yeah, it almost feels too forced at a certain point, and I feel like the audience can tell when it's contrived or when things are being put out because it's, you know, you're putting out a hook or something, or clickbait that you're trying to goad an audience into whatever, viewing it. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I think that's why it's successful, where people are just like straight up talking to the camera or doing more intimate type of things. What are your visions and goals for a movie? I'm sure you'd love to make Hollywood movies and to documentary on projects that you're really excited about. What's your vision board looking like, and are you making like conscious steps towards that, or how the next couple of years looking for you?
I have only had really loose talks with some friends about possible ideas. I have talked to some buddies about taking some of these traditional cultures that I've filmed in a documentary sense and trying to create narrative stories around them, where basically we take these people who are living a traditional life and sort of bring some of their struggles to life through a fictional protagonist, but using the real culture as part of it and trying to make it exciting and cinematic at the same time. And I've also been getting back more into commercial production lately. That was on a big hiatus because of the pandemic, but I just started working on a campaign for a cruise company that will take at least a year. Not all of my time, but a lot of it. And to be honest, it feels good to kind of be a part of something that's sort of continuing. Whereas with YouTube and social media, it feels like every project is very short. And it starts and it stops. It starts and it stops. And then in terms of documentary, one thing I'm interested in right now is filming the Japanese fire festivals.
Cool.
And I've thought about making a travel film or like a documentary that's like a series of those festivals, because they have them all year long and each one is like crazier than the next and more dangerous than the next. And if there's one thing I love, it's an extremely dangerous, ridiculous cultural festival, because I like to learn why people do it, what it means to them symbolically, why they put their bodies and their lives at risk for something that is so like there's no tangible benefit. Like it's like a sport without prizes or without any sort of a championship game. You do the fire festival, you survive the fire, and then what? So yeah, there's a number of these in Japan that I'm interested in filming, and I thought about making that a bigger project where I just travel around the country maybe for a year and film many of them and then compile them together.
That's super cool. What have you learned from these cultural experiences and like you're saying, did you say fire festival? Is that what it's called?
There's a number of festivals involving fire.
I'm thinking Japan. Of that fraud festival that had the fire festival.
Yeah, but fire
no
with
relation.
An I,
not with a Y.
Why, you want to be in the sequel?
Heck no. The first time was bad enough.
Yeah. No, this one we would use I would be filming actual festivals involving fire. But what I mean by that is in Japan, they have festivals where they burn stuff. They'll build an effigy. They'll set a temple on fire. There's a festival where they light torches and run through the woods at night and race each other.
Wow.
There's a number of them.
What's the cultural, or what's the significance, or for them with that?
Generally, it's a way of warding off bad spirits, ensuring good luck, good harvest, fertility, things like that. It's the same basic reasons as most cultural festivals around the world. But the Japanese just have a thing for danger, making these festivals really, really dangerous. And that's what I find kind of fascinating.
Yeah, that is super cool. Yeah, I mean, story is always the heart and soul of anything. So to be able to find something, just going and seeing something scenic is one thing, but to be able to shine a light on a culture, or kind of dig deeper onto why they do the things that they do, or to make it common for other people to see. Some people never travel at all, so I don't know, the why and the story of why you're showing it to people, I think is super important, and a thing that I think is kind of lost in today's form of social media and storytelling. There's so much just highlight reels of like, here's a beautiful place, here's nothing about the culture, bye-bye. So to be able to shine a light and like, no, this is like native traditions, this is what their thought process is, this is what the culture is like. So do you think having parents that are from other cultures, do you think that was always a fascination for you, that you were... For me, both of my parents are South African, so growing up in America, it was just like I had lions and Nelson Mandela and all these like tribal things in my home. So when I went to school, it was just like, I was aware of other things, so I was always fascinated about what else was out there. So yeah, where do you think that curiosity came from for you?
Well, maybe it was some latent desire to see why I felt so different in America. I don't know if you've had that same feeling where it's just, you walk around and you're like, you know what, speak English just like everybody else. I grew up here, but, well, first of all, people tell me that I look different. They're like, you don't look like an American. I still do. But
I don't even know what that means. America's such a melting pot. Yeah.
They mean you.
No.
They mean I should look like you.
I look like Theo James. No, but I never felt, I guess I felt American, but I had an accent kind of growing up too, so I had to acclimate a little bit. So yeah, I never fully felt, fully American. Like my parents speak Afrikaans in the home and stuff like that. But I like that. It's nice knowing that there's more than just your neighborhood,
Well, I'd say it's addictive to get out and see other cultures and see a new normal. Because that's one thing I realized. I started off wanting to see exotic cultures. I started off thinking, this place looks so different, I must go there, and everything, when I go there, everything must be so dramatic, and people, I don't know, they must be completely different. And of course, things are different, but to the people there, everything is boring and normal and mundane, and I'm just in their backyard. So my exotic is there every day. And they would ask me about America. When I would tell them I'm American and finally convince them I'm American, they'd be like, oh, so what is America like? And I'm like, I have nothing to say. What are you talking about? That's like the most normal thing in the world to me. But they're like, no. What is it like, in California and Los Angeles? Like, what is Hollywood like? Does everybody have a huge house? Do they all drive fancy cars? Do you live next to a movie star? Do you have a pool in your backyard? Are there palm trees everywhere that you go? And yeah, there's a fascination, I think, with the other side of the world, no matter which side you're on.
Yeah, the grass is always greener. It's also what's presented too. Like California's main export is movies and celebrities and stuff. So when people come here in the hopes of seeing all of that, it is funny too. When I travel, sometimes I'm conscious of I'm filming something that feels cool and unique to me. But this is like, they're just doing their laundry right now. You know what I mean? I'll be in Morocco and they're washing their stuff outside. And I'm like, ooh, colors, exotic. And I'm like filming it. And in my head, I'm like, they're just doing their laundry. Like, imagine if I was doing my laundry and all of a sudden some random person was filming me. So yeah, I try to be super conscious of how I interact with the people I'm filming also. There's like a quote like, leave nothing but your footprints behind. I try to be super conscious when I'm traveling and stuff like that, to not be too invasive of the people that I'm filming and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you still have the bug to go out and see different cultures and drop in? That's how you and I initially connected, is because we both film travel.
Yeah.
We were both in a phase of like really exploring the world and making it cinematic and showing the people and the place, the types of different environments that we were in. So I just wonder if that era has passed for you, or if you're still, fascinated by it.
I think it's like anything else, it ebbs and flows. I find when I'm filming, sometimes I'll be wanting to just be home and recharging and editing. And then when I'm at home recharging and editing, I get the itch to want to go out and film again. Also, finding new styles in which to film things has been super interesting. I would buy like a Super 8 film camera, and it's like, okay, maybe let me try filming with this, and I can get, it's a different way of shooting, or just doing stuff locked off on a tripod, or, or just trying to do long takes on a steady camera using a certain lens. I find, switching up your pattern is important. But no, I mean, the itch to travel never really goes away. I love seeing new things. Also, for me, filmmaking is, I'm always watching stuff, I'm always watching TV shows, movies, or whatever. And what my favorite genre is science fiction and like fantasy. So even when I travel, I always want to find a way to show it through that lens. So if I'm filming a temple in Morocco or something, my brain just like goes to being a kid and seeing Aladdin's carpet flying. And it's like, all right, maybe if I do something like that, or add stars or whatever, So no, but what about you? I'm sure you're still, and anything can get kind of fatigued and played out, but it's like trying to keep it new,
I think the thing that's passed for me is the urge to travel just to see new places and to tick off some imaginary bucket list checklists. I don't have that urge anymore. And I don't really have an urge just to wander streets and film stuff because I've done that for like 10 years now. And it's great when you first start, but first of all, now everybody's doing it. It's much more common than it was when I first started. And second of all, like every shot that I could do easily walking around the street, I've done 100 times by now. All the easy shots I've done. And now I need to push myself beyond that sort of entry level of the easy shots and try to do stuff that feels fresh and exciting and challenging to me.
Yeah. I find we're always trying to make something that one-ups the thing we did before, which is healthy. And I think that's how you grow, and you challenge yourself and you challenge the standard. But I think it's just bigger stories for me, I think, is what interests me more now. Same, like my early 20s, I had that hunger just to, it's almost like we were not conquerors, but it's just like you had a map and you're like, who can go to this really cool place and who can, tick this off of their, and like, it was almost like you would just go to a place, make a video there, and you'd be like, haha, and you planted a flag there, and you're like, I'm the one who made this cool video here. But now it's everyone's going everywhere, everyone's doing everything. And it's less of, I try to not be as conscious of that and more of what really cool story can I tell, and how do I've been banking content for 5 years probably. I have content from trips that I haven't done anything with, and it's not because I don't want to, it's just I want to, when I release it, I want it to be something that feels so full. I almost, the way this is probably not healthy, but the way I think about videos is, if after I posted the video I died, if someone watched that video, would they know who I am? I want to leave something that feels like, okay, this is who he is, this is how he feels, this is how he sees the world. So that's why, for me, I have almost an unhealthy relationship with social media sometimes, because I'm constantly looking and comparing myself, which is why I think Convo was so fun, because you get to meet in person the people that you see digitally, and you get to be like, oh, this is what they're like, this is what they're thinking about, this is what they do in the morning when they go eat breakfast. And we just had normal conversations, you know what I mean? And it strips away this, because everyone's posting highlight reels of their life. So for me, that was really cool. And now I almost have a refreshed way, because I also followed a lot more people. I probably followed like 30 more people just from that experience. And it almost like it reinvigorated my wanting this to be like, oh, let me just keep making cool stuff, because it's like, it's cool seeing what other people are doing, and how there's people filming lunch while we were there, and they would turn out an edit later that day. And it's just cool to see the different perspective of how people go about making content and storytelling. But I feel like we both come from the same school of thought, where it's like filmmaking, longer stories, bigger ways of expressing things, maybe not vertical,
Well, I think everybody, whether they want to admit it or not, at least guys who are making stuff sort of like us, are kind of in the back of their head thinking, all right, someday I'm going to be Denis Villeneuve. I mean, y'all don't know it yet, but I'm definitely going to be directing the next like $200 million blockbuster in a few years, or I'm going to be making the next Oscar-winning documentary or something more traditional. I'm going to be directing the next Squid Game. I've got Bridgerton, the next Bridgerton sitting in the back of my head. I just got to get these little videos out first.
Yeah.
Test some waters, and then the big thing's going to happen. And honestly, I don't know if that is going to happen for me. I
have faith in you.
I don't know if I needed to. I
Okay.
think it would be nice if it does, but that world is very, very different from the world of solo content creation and social media. And the process of making anything like that in a traditional format, long form, big budget, big studio, is not. You don't have the freedom, and it's a long commitment with a lot of stakeholders who they don't make your life any easier, and they're not going away anytime soon. And some people do great in a high stress environment where every minute is money. Every second is a big budget decision. And some people are better just kind of being like a solo bird, flying around, doing their thing, and living a different kind of life.
Yeah, I think that is the beauty of social media too, right? Like YouTube, now you can be your own TV channel if you want, That's why they called it a channel, is because everyone is their own kind of. But yeah, I love that, because I know people that started on YouTube and now do have their own TV show and stuff. So I think the more you invest and put into yourself, maybe that will be the IP that gets something, that gets a studio, or whatever, gets someone interested. But what would you like to see from, so like in an ideal world, what would you like to see from social media coming from a solo filmmaking person? Do you think we're in need of a new platform? Do you think we're in need for just a different algorithm that showcases more of this type of content? Or, if you could go to the drawing board and go to these people, like, what would you do?
I would make Vimeo at least like 1/10 as popular as YouTube. And remember when Vimeo, okay, now I'm reaching way back, because probably a lot of people watching this will be like Googling Vimeo right now. Like, what the hell's a Vimeo?
I remember when MySpace was.
In my day, the computer was a person sitting in a room. So Vimeo had series that, like, one of them was High Maintenance, which ended up becoming a Hulu series or something. But they funded series that were in that sort of indie hipster Vimeo style. And when that started happening, I think about 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years ago, I don't know how long ago, a long time, I was really excited, because I thought, okay, cool, we've got a platform that's social, where filmmakers can post like actual filmmaking, not, we've got a platform and it's social, where filmmakers can post actual films and not just vlogs or tutorials talking about filmmaking. They can post the actual films and have an audience, and there's a chance for that to lead to the next step, which is series, something bigger. And that seems to have fizzled out, over recent years, and they're not really doing that anymore. But if I controlled the internet, I would have a platform like Vimeo for actual films and shows that are sort of user generated, that can get major backing to become the equivalent of a Netflix show, but without the overhead of Netflix and without being behind a paywall like Netflix.
Yeah, that would be cool if like Vimeo and YouTube had a baby, or even if there was a channel, because I don't want to take away Vimeo, but if there was a channel on YouTube that was solely spotlighting just filmmakers or something, and then, yeah, like you're saying, you can be seen by people and they actually put dollars towards taking concepts or series or films or whatever and developing it.
Well, YouTube did that with YouTube Red.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's even still around.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember that, what was that TV show that's now on Netflix? Cobra Kai, I think, was like a YouTube original show or something, and then Netflix took it over. But yeah, I think in general, just showcasing filmmaking. Why do you think Vimeo is not as popular, like app-wise, web-wise?
They got bought out by a different company, and the company thought that the tech side of Vimeo would ultimately be more profitable. So now Vimeo is primarily selling storage and cloud space and streaming solutions, and they're not so focused on being an artist enabler like they used to be. They still have the staff picks. I got a staff pick a year ago, so that was my latest for Morocco Arise, my short film about Morocco. But it didn't really mean as much as it did when I got a staff pick like 8 years ago. Because here's what it was like getting a staff pick 8 years ago on Vimeo. I would see the notification of staff pick. I would see the likes and the comments just like take over my email inbox, because back then I didn't filter any of that. I just let it roll. So I had, suddenly 1,000 new emails. And then among those emails would be at least a dozen inquiries from high-level creative agencies, direct from brands, tourism boards, just anybody who was relevant and looking for that kind of content to be created for them. And they would just straight up say to me, hey, we loved your video. Do you want to do something like that for, like visit like Italy? Or, do you want to come to Catalonia and make a short film with a budget, under the auspices of the Catalonia experience? Or, I got invited to go back to Hong Kong after I made a Hong Kong video and meet with like a dozen different companies that all wanted to involve me in different creative types of projects. So that was really great. Yeah. And that felt legit. And now with YouTube, there still are opportunities, especially if you go viral, like the old days, just going viral and getting attention. Like I think, I forget the name of it, Nothing But Everything. There was a short film that was posted on YouTube just a few months ago.
That Darren Aronofsky purchased? Was it that one or a different one?
Did he purchase it? It was a teen like dramedy.
Was it the coming of age?
It was like
story?
A coming of age story.
Yeah, I think Darren
shot in high school.
Yeah, I think it starts with like the 7 minutes or something like that.
It's like pick a number 1 through 10 is how it starts. Yeah,
I think Darren Aronofsky called. Yeah, the kid like went to Harvard or something, and Darren Aronofsky, they're now developing it into a movie.
Yeah, and it can happen.
Yeah, it's still possible. Yeah,
but that's a crapshoot.
Yeah,
that's winning the lottery. And throughout my whole life, I've never been that big of a risk taker, and I don't want to rely on just winning the lottery.
Yeah.
And what would be great is if there was a way that it could be a bit more reliable for people who are just making quality content who maybe don't win the lottery to still be able to bridge those steps between YouTube and like Hollywood or Netflix.
For sure. I want to hear your thought process on, or just your take on kind of the art and commerce, which I always try to ask people while they're on this, because obviously like making a living is important. And I think the one thing that does kind of come from, if you are making really solid work, it seems like the brand stuff comes in, but then how often are you really wanting to do brand stuff, as opposed to, I find the more I say yes to doing content for brands or whatever, yeah, you can make it super creative and stuff, but it kind of takes away your creative juices from focusing on the more artistic visions and outlet you kind of want to do. So do you try to keep it 50-50, or are you searching out brand or just only brands that you want to work with? Like, yeah, I know this is a very kind of fortunate thing to talk about, because not everyone's, gets brand deals or whatever. But yeah, if you're making consistent work and is being viewed by people, I think it is important trying to figure out that balance between, art and commerce.
Yeah, it really does have to be a balance. And I don't know if anybody who's serious about the art, I don't know if they ever actually find the balance. You can talk to anybody who you would consider successful in the arts, who also considers themselves an artist, and they're just constantly struggling with it. As for the way that I've handled it, generally over the years, what I've done is I do a lot of sponsored stuff, but then I take a few months out of the year and do a personal project. No sponsors at all, like my Morocco video. I spent about 6 weeks shooting it and about 3 months on and off editing it. And that was completely personal. No brand, nothing. Posted it on Vimeo, posted it on YouTube, sent it to film festivals, won some film festival awards, and got a lot of comments from people in Morocco and like letters from people in Morocco that they loved it. And that's kind of what that was for me, was saying, okay, cool, I can still impact a culture. I can still reach people that I've never met and I may never meet, who don't even speak English as their primary language, by making one of these films that's kind of universal. And I don't care if that film itself actually makes any money. Like, that doesn't matter, because a lot of the rest of the stuff I do is primarily driven by, making money for myself or for a brand or for both. So I try to always carve out that time, but it would be great to integrate, me making some money with doing something that has like artistic value to me. And I've been doing that a bit more lately. I've made a few short films where they were sponsored by a company, but the brand, like, a video, like a camera gear brand, they basically gave me complete freedom. And they said, as long as you use our product sort of like this, and as long as you finish it by this date, then you can kind of do whatever you want. So I've done a few of those, and it's I think overall it's been the healthiest balance of art and commerce that I found so far. Because the thing is, the reality of all this is, whether you're making YouTube videos, or you're making Hollywood films or Netflix films or whatever, anything that costs money to make is going to become a business at some point, because you can only keep spending your own money up until a certain point until you just go broke, unless you're, a Rockefeller or something. So for most of us, there's got to be also money coming back in somehow, whether it's from this project or for the next.
Yeah. It'd be funny just to see like a Rockefeller filmmaker just just out there. He's like, I'm just passionate about hyperlapses.
I just like making films about boats sinking.
Yeah.
I go out there, I sink a boat, then I sink another boat.
Yeah. That's like if Dr. Evil made films.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, that is smart. I always hear, even in other interviews, people are like, one for them and one for me, trying to keep that balance. I guess
but the thing is, okay, the brands that sponsor me are brands that make gear for making films. And what they really want to see is that gear used to make a film. They don't want me to just sit in my studio, hold it, and say, all right, these are the specs, this is how it's supposed to look, thank you very much, I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
I think that's a way of making a YouTube video that still resonates with a lot of people, and the audience does get a lot of value from it. But I don't think that's actually what the brands all dream of seeing when they hand off that lens to a YouTuber, or when a camera company like Sony hands a Burano to a YouTuber. I think what they dream of seeing is maybe some of that, but also some results that prove that this person can actually make something that you couldn't make without that piece of gear, or you couldn't do it as well.
I also think it's like create the lane or the space you want to be in. So oftentimes since you're making beautiful cinematic travel films, when brands approach you, they're already just gonna be like, hand it to you and be like, you're already running in this direction, so just do it naturally and just integrate this. For a lot of people that might be watching that haven't even started yet or whatever, it's just start going in the direction you want to go in, and then eventually you'll be able to tie in the brands or the different things. But yeah, a lot of the times you kind of have to create the space or create the proof that you can do it, and then all of a sudden you can tie in different things into it. But yeah, sometimes it's hard knowing what your style is, or knowing what your vision is. Yeah. How often do you consume social media stuff? Are you kind of...
I'm constantly on social media, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's not that I want to specifically, or I find it always interesting. It's just the phone's in my pocket. I got a few minutes to spare, and it's like a fidget toy.
Yeah.
Probably like it is for a lot of people. And as much as I would love to be actively like getting inspired from what I see on social media, I think the reality is that it's a lot more passive. Like, I'm passing time looking at some stuff on Instagram. That style is sort of finding its way, into my brain and just sitting there. And then the next time I go to shoot, I've got this shot idea that I don't even know where it really came from, but it's probably from one of the 1,000 reels that I watched over the last week or the last few months. And it's just lodged back there somewhere in my subconscious.
Yeah.
And it comes back out.
Yeah. So how much active scrolling do you think you're doing, like searching for things, or you think it's mostly just seeing what the algorithm spits out at you?
I feel like it gets a lot more active when I have a specific project I'm working toward and a specific goal. Like, I'm doing a commercial project for a cruise brand, cruise ships.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I hadn't watched a lot of cruise ship commercials before.
That's not your favorite thing to search?
Well, I mean, just it's a niche, and it's something that I hadn't really watched a lot. So I started searching for what people had filmed on cruises and different ways of representing that journey visually, in motion. And I found a lot of creative videos that I probably would have never stumbled across otherwise. And I made specific notes. Oh, okay, they use this kind of shot, this kind of angle. They show this part of the boat. This is what it looks like when they disembark. This is what it looks like when they do the the farewell ceremony. This is sort of the amount of time that you have when you get off the boat until you have to get back on, and this is what you could possibly shoot in that amount of time. This is the crowd you're going to be with. This is the type of food they're probably going to serve. The time of day when you're probably going to have the good sunsets, the different angles on the boat that you'll be able to catch the sunsets. You know, all these things that probably I wouldn't have paid attention to if I was casually just scrolling, even if that was a topic that came up on my feed anyway. So I guess if there's a lesson or anything actionable about this, it may be that if you set yourself a specific project that you want to work toward, and you do active searching and active browsing in the direction of that project, then it might turn into a lot more productive social media time. So like the forebrain is being engaged instead of just like the lizard brain sitting there saying, "Oh, that's funny, you know, make an omelet, it's huge." You know?
Yeah. Not just sit there like feed me, but actually figuring out what the intention is. I don't know what you were talking about. That was just picturing Titanic, just people like waving on the boat. I'll never let go. But yeah, I mean, a year project. That's exciting. I hope it goes really well.
Yeah, me too.
Do you? I guess gear. Do you? How? It's funny because I also watched your video talking about the different lenses that you use. I always find it fascinating, like what people keep in their camera bag. And I know you keep things small, compact, portable. So do you still use the mini gimbal or the smaller version of the Ronin, and do you try to keep your lenses nice and compact? How do you think about packing your gear and what gear that you're using when you're shooting?
Well, I still shoot primarily on the Sony A7S III because it's got an EVF, and most of the alternatives either don't have an EVF, like the FX3, or they have an EVF, but you trade off something else, like the A7C2, where you've got a crop sensor, but it has an EVF. So the A7S III is still the best of all those worlds for me. And my kit around the A7S III has changed, but it's basically the same as it was a few years ago, which is I use a compact gimbal. Right now I'm using the DJI RS4 primarily, just because it has a few more bells and whistles than the RS3 Mini did, but I wouldn't hesitate to go back to the RS3 Mini because that was perfectly fine. So if anybody's like thinking about their first gimbal, I would still recommend the RS3 Mini because it's inexpensive and it works 90% as well as the full-size gimbals do. And in terms of lenses, I shoot mostly on primes. I use the Samyang VAF primes, which are rehoused photo lenses that are sort of like cinema lenses, but they don't have all of the like specs that you would want for a top level cinema lens. Like they have breathing and they're not perfect character wise. They have some ghosting. They're not the sharpest, but what they do have is autofocus and matched size, weight, and built-in focus gears. So they're just really practical to use, especially on a gimbal.
So you don't need to rebalance every time you want to switch focal lengths.
You don't have to rebalance. And then I use magnetic variable ND filters. And that's something I've been using for years. I don't like to screw in filters, especially when it's cold outside. It's really, really awkward. And if I use filter thread adapters to take my lenses up to the size of my filter so that everything can use the same filter, the problem with those filter thread adapters is that they tend to unscrew with the filter when I try to unscrew it. And that can become a really big problem if I'm trying to switch quickly.
Yeah. Other than the Japan kind of trip that you have coming up, is there anything else that you're just inspired to go do, and any like, do you have any films percolating in your brain that if a big company came to you and like, hey kid, you got any ideas, we want to put your name in lights, like do you write, do you keep, like, how do you keep track of your ideas?
Okay, honestly, the hardest thing for me is sitting down and coming up with an idea instead of just going out there, seeing something and getting inspired by it. And I've been inspired by a lot of what I've already filmed and seen, but I've struggled for years to turn that into something like bigger or different. I think the kind of bigger project that would be the most natural for me would be something like the films Baraka or Samsara. If you've ever seen those.
I have both of them on Blu-ray right there.
You do? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are, if anyone hasn't seen them, those are absolute epics. If you're interested in travel videos, if you want to know where all of this came from, those films were hugely inspirational for me.
Same.
And they were the most universal sort of cinematic experience that I could possibly imagine. There's no words, there's no plot. It's just images that somehow connect on, I don't want to say spiritual level, but maybe spiritual level. I mean, something above the mortal coil. You know, that's how it felt watching those films for me. So they're just cultural documentaries that are images and sounds and some sort of thematic connection that brings people together, you know, as a shared suffering or joy of the human experience from around the world. So I would love to compile things I've already filmed, maybe film new cultures, new scenes, and make a bigger project along those lines. But of course, it can't just be that because it's already been done a few times as documentaries. But that would be, you know, something wordless and a bit amorphous, something a bit abstract like that would probably be the most natural fit for my brain, because yeah, it's really hard for me to sit down and say, okay, here's the plot, you know, here's the big concept.
Yeah, so even, I mean, that's awesome. You like both of those films first and foremost, because that was my inspiration also. I bought them and I still have a Blu-ray collection. I don't know why, but I would watch them all the time. And just, yeah, even the sound, like the sound design of the different elements and the chanting and whatever was in there. But yeah, it definitely is a spiritual experience. So when you do branded stuff or stuff on your own, that a lot, you know, I just did a branded thing where I had to write out the voiceover and the concept and everything beforehand, which, you know, I can, but not my favorite thing to do kind of that detailed level of pre-production. So when you do have to do stuff like that, are you capable of doing it? You just would prefer not to, or you think most of your inspiration comes from just seeing what you're seeing and filming that?
Well, I did it recently. Actually, I just posted on my YouTube channel a video that was sponsored by Small Rig, but they gave me free reign to do anything I wanted with this new product. It's a camera. It's a cage for smartphones.
Was that the action?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
So I made a little action movie, and I did actually write a script for that because I had to, because everybody involved had to know what was going on.
Yeah.
So we did a 5-day shoot. We planned all the locations in advance. We had a complete plot from beginning to end that was actually on paper, which is something new for me. And it was a big challenge because I was like, I don't know what happens next. Maybe this, you know? And so I just wrote it down. And look, I've been doing this for a long time, but it's still so weird to me when I come up with something that, like, just out of my head, it's not real. I just made it up, and everybody standing around is like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And then they actually go do it. I'm like, whoa, wait, can we talk about this? 'Cause I don't know if that was a good idea.
Yeah.
But that was eye-opening to have to actually follow through with those ideas and make something. But I gave myself an out, sort of. Like, I know how to create elements basically in a plot and a plan where if something doesn't work the way I thought it would, I can cover for it with another thing instead of locking myself into like a one take, you know, master shot kind of film or something completely linear. So this short film, if anyone wants to watch it, is almost like a movie trailer. The way it's edited, there's a lot of cross-cutting. There's VO that comes from one scene that plays over another scene. And actually, while we were shooting, I didn't have the voiceover planned completely. I just had little sound bites that sort of sounded good. And then when I was editing, I used AI voiceover to put a temporary voice in there to fill in the gaps.
Cool.
Because you hear a man speak as he's sort of halfway narrating what happens on screen, but I didn't know how the edit was going to turn out. So basically, I gave myself the out of being able to rewrite some of the dialogue in post by making it voiceover.
That's smart. That's funny. You came up with like a contingent while you were doing. You're like, in case this doesn't work out, I could, my plan B. But yeah, I mean, for fights specifically, action, you really need to do the pre-production and know the cuts almost ahead of time, right? To make sure that it's gonna all work and match.
Well, I had a fight coordinator, so I didn't do that all on my own. And the other hack, I guess, if you want to call it that I've sort of learned about doing these projects that have to be planned more, is you find an expert who's done it a million times, and anything that could possibly happen that I would consider like a deal breaker, a world-ending, calamity, catastrophe, to them it's just Tuesday. It's just another day, and they say, "Oh no, this is how you deal with that." So my fight coordinator is a guy. He's still around.
I was about to say what happened.
My fight coordinator is a guy named Stephen Rennie, who has worked on like real Hollywood movies and a lot of them. He's on one right now, and he spends a lot of time in Bangkok, around where we filmed, and he likes to do these YouTube videos with me for fun. So for him, these little shoots that I'm doing are just nothing. That's like a walk in the park for him. So somebody doesn't show up, or an actor punches the wall and their hand might be fractured, or we're running out of light and it was supposed to be a daytime shoot. No matter what happens, he says, "Oh, you do this," and fixes it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a couple of action things, and that no one's better than a stunt coordinator on set. They've seen it all. They know every backup. They know how to cheat things. I was just like, oh, someone needs to like get kicked and punched in the face, and you're like, yeah, they just turn their body this way. They do, and boom, they know blocking.
Well, like for instance, we had a scene where we wanted one guy to attack multiple other guys and beat them all up. The problem is we only had one actual stunt person available for that scene, and the rest of the people were not stunt people. And the thing about that is you can't have somebody who's not a stunt person take a hit or a fall.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they can actually hurt themselves. So he constructed the scene. You'll see it in the film. It's the first bar fight. He constructed the scene so that the first person, when they get supposedly hit, they fall comfortably into a chair just off screen, and all they had to do is sit down. They didn't actually fall. And then the second person, who wasn't a stunt person, doesn't actually get hit. He picks up a pool cue as if he's going to attack, and then the hero, instead of punching the guy, just threatens him instead. And then the dude backs down. So he created, he basically changed the plot so that he could accommodate the limitations that we had.
That's super cool.
Because he's done it a million times before, and for him, this is just Tuesday. It's no big deal.
Surround yourself with the best, right? I'll end it on 2 questions. One, if you had any advice to give either to a younger version of you or to anyone that is trying to come up and be in your shoes or do something similar like you have done, what advice would you give them?
My basic advice to anybody who is starting out is you're going to copy, and that's fine. Everybody copies, but copy 2 people at the same time, not just one. Because if you copy one person, everybody can tell who you're copying. But if you copy 2 people and add a little bit of yourself in there, now you're mixing some masala, and people don't really know where it's coming from, and you seem like more of an original. It also forces you to get a bit more creative instead of just doing step by step, following tutorials and then turning them into your own content and calling it original. So yeah, try to mix your influences, and honestly, once you've got some sort of audience, somebody watching, everything else will start to follow from there. But it takes a little while, but you'll figure out who wants to watch your stuff and what kind of stuff you're really good at.
Nice. I like that. You hit the remix button. You're like, I'm not just splice in as many as you can, and then
copy 3 people if you can.
Yeah, just put as many spices in there as you can.
Exactly.
And then the second would be, I always find legacy interesting. How if you could, one day when you're in the spirit realm, what would you hope that your legacy is and how people talk and remember you?
I've always just wanted the videos that I make to be as meaningful to the people in the cultures I'm filming as to the people who are just casually watching from elsewhere in the world. So like the Morocco film I just made, it's going to be on YouTube possibly after I'm gone. I don't know if YouTube is still there, but I want people in Morocco, when they see it, to feel proud of being Moroccan, whether it's now or 50 years from now when things are way different there, and they'll look at it as some sort of a nostalgic time capsule. But that matters a lot to me.
Yeah, that's super cool. And then on that note, because I find empathy is just so important. How would you try to get across to people the general importance of empathy, of kind of removing your ego, and then because you're saying, I feel like you can go and film any culture. It doesn't matter what country it's from, but for you, it's, human first, So how important do you think that is, and how do you think other people can tune into that and kind of like remove themselves from the equation when they go and try to visit new countries or just make art in general?
Well, here's the easy test. You take a shot of somebody and you show it to them and you look at their face. And if you see their face light up, then that's empathy. Yeah. You're doing it right.
Yeah, you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for them, and also just trying to capture it as natural as you can. Yeah, that's super cool. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm glad we got to connect in human form after so many years.
Yeah, me too. This has been actually really great.
Yeah. let's do something creative sometime.
Cool, let's do it.
Yeah, figure out a trip or something.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I'm gonna run through my backyard with fire after this. Good
Thanks,
to
Jordan.
see you, bro.
All right, dude.
Appreciate you.